Welcome back in, everybody, to the Auburn Undercover YouTube channel. Christian Clemente here, joined by Jason Caldwell. Little War Eagle Wake Up. You're either watching this late Sunday night or Monday morning after Auburn got some big portal news. Before we get into that, make sure you subscribe. Check down below if you're not subscribed to the YouTube already. The YouTube subscription does not cost you anything. We're very close to 10,000 subs, trying to make that push. So that would be greatly appreciated. But Jason, big news on Sunday afternoon is Philip Blidi, the former Indiana defensive lineman, transfers in. More of a three-tech, and I start by prefacing that for a reason, because there will be a nose guard that we will touch on shortly after Philip Blidi. But defensive line was the biggest point of emphasis going into the spring window, and that is the first edition for Auburn in the spring portal window.
Yeah, no, we talked about, for Auburn, looking for at least a couple of additions on the defensive line. Philip Blidi's the guy that's listed around 6'3", 295, 300 or so. You see the picture there. And this is a leaner guy that can create some pass rush, do some of those things. And I think that's a big deal. Obviously, for him, was at Texas Tech before Indiana. And I think this is a big deal when you start talking for Auburn, just wanting to add more firepower on the defensive front. I think that's the goal. When you don't have a Derek Brown, can you bring in, can you have a rotation of 6 or 8 guys for those 3 interior defensive line spots where you don't have any drop off, where you can kind of stay fresh, keep the pressure on? I think that's what this does for Auburn, and bringing in another guy that can be kind of that true tackle spot in kind of a spot that Auburn is kind of in between. I mean, KeAndre Falk's not quite there as a 3 technique yet. You think about who you've got at that position. Auburn's got more nose guys maybe, and so even though they're still looking for guys there, I think it's a really important pickup for Auburn, and a guy that at that position with his experience should be able to come in and play pretty quickly.
Yeah, so Vontrell King-Williams gets a win, beats out LSU in the process. I know LSU felt pretty good at one point. Washington got a visit. Oklahoma tried to get him to visit. Same with Missouri and Oregon. So no shortage of suitors. Interior defensive line is definitely the biggest point of emphasis for when you're looking at all the schools hitting the spring portal window. That's been the biggest point of emphasis. And Vontrell might not be done. Isaiah Rakes, a name that Auburn fans are probably plenty familiar with, the former Texas A&M defensive lineman, transferred in December/January. He visited Auburn at that point. He ends up committing to USC, spends the spring semester there, enters the portal again, has not taken any visits. He announced on Twitter on Sunday that he's going to announce a commitment on Monday. As of right now, we expect that to be Auburn. Things can always change in the fluid transfer portal world, but Auburn was the runner-up in that first portal window. He hasn't visited anywhere else. You can kind of connect the dots there and see that he might be headed towards his runner-up, who now also has his former defensive coordinator in DJ Durkin, and the former defensive line assistant coach as well, helping out with Vontrell King-Williams. So this could be your nose tackle addition. It could maybe be done in terms of interior defensive lineman if you get him on Monday.
Yeah, I think so. I think you look at it trying to add a couple of big pieces, and it is big pieces. Isaiah Rakes is 6'1", listed like 6'1", 313 or so. This is a guy that can eat up some space inside. You think about Auburn already with the bodies they have. Obviously, if you look at kind of the additions they brought in, you got Jason Jones there already in the middle, in kind of that bigger body. Isaiah Rakes would be more of that classic nose guard type that Jason Jones is. And now you got a couple of guys that could be tweeners, maybe, when you think about, some of the guys you brought in before. Obviously, the addition, of Blidi. They've got some bigger body guys and guys that they can roll and do some different things with.
Getting on campus. By the time you're listening to this, he should already be on campus, as long as there's no travel delays or anything like that. Kon Crawford, former Arkansas State edge rusher, played there for 2 years, has 2 years of eligibility remaining. This would be a buck linebacker addition. Auburn already went into the spring portal window looking to add one. Brenton Williams departing only kind of added to that, in a sense that they needed a buck linebacker even more. Kon Crawford, a guy that has familiarity with this staff a little bit because of where he's from. Jason, that's something that you've written about. Chris Hummer from 24/7 Sports had a very interesting feature talking with Kon Crawford earlier this week. I would highly encourage you to go read that. This is a kid who played basketball really growing up through high school, and he was kind of that classic good basketball player, but not big enough necessarily. And so I think his quote to Hummer was, they told him to just go out there and play football and just go get the ball. And they put him at edge rusher. And so far that's turned out pretty well. I think he had, I believe, 5.5 sacks as a sophomore at Arkansas State, gotten a ton of offers, should be on campus Sunday, Monday, probably depart sometime Tuesday, I would assume. And this is a guy that Auburn would love to add at the buck position, to add a little bit more on the outside there after you maybe shore up the inside.
Yeah, no, I think he's a really intriguing guy when you think about that basketball background. Not a ton of football experience for him, but he's already been productive. And you think about kind of taking the next step physically for a guy like that, how he's continued to grow and mature on the field. And I think it'd be a really important addition. You've already with Blidi, if you could add Isaiah Rakes and then you get this piece, that's a defensive front that looks a whole lot different than even it did this spring for Auburn when you start talking about the pieces in place. And I think, obviously you have, Jalen McLeod there, and then a bunch of young guys. And this is somebody that gives you a little bit of experience, help you bridge the gap. But that's a place where you can play two guys at the same time, especially on third downs, and get some guys on the field. So I don't think this is going to impact the freshmen a great deal. They still want to play them and get them. But it gives you, as we said, another break the glass in case of emergency situation. If Jalen McLeod were to get injured, banged up, and he was much of the year last year. And they did not really have another true pass rusher to take his spot. And when they didn't, it became something they got exposed by a little bit. This would give you another pass rush option, not a true freshman for Auburn if you were to break him in.
Yeah, I mean, look, you have to. And Auburn knows that. They're also after former Miami edge rusher Nigelique Kelly. I believe it's pronounced Nigelique. It might be Nigelique. I'm not entirely sure. Apologies to him. I don't know his first name super well. But he's expected to visit sometime next week. If Auburn gets Kon Crawford, they might be done at buck linebacker. So that's something that we're tracking. We do think Kon Crawford maybe a little bit higher on the board. But Jason, you're completely right. You need to layer that depth chart a little bit. You don't need necessarily another 1-year guy, because if you get that and him and Jalen McLeod leave at the same time, and maybe your young guys aren't quite as ready to go next year, then you're right back to the portal next year searching for another buck linebacker. Now you still might be, but theoretically, if you get Kon Crawford, 2 years of eligibility left, you feel good about how he can contribute this year, lead those young guys, Joe Phillips, Jamonte Waller behind him. It would be a very good fit. So Auburn will look to fill that with him, and we'll see how things go there. We'll have that covered at auburnundercover.com. Last one that we'll touch on real quick for the War Eagle Wakeup's KeAndre Lambert Smith, the former Penn State standout who had 4 years of all-around solid contribution for the Nittany Lions, but his most productive year was this most recent season, the 2023 season. I think it was something like 53 catches, 700-ish yards, something like that. I know he has over 1,700 career receiving yards, 10-plus touchdowns in his career. A guy that Auburn really, really likes. He officially visited over the weekend, got a chance to catch up with him. He's going to hit Texas A&M, or he went straight from Auburn to Texas A&M, so he's already there as you're listening to this. Might go to Colorado this upcoming week. Will go to USC next weekend. And then, there's some other schools in the mix as well, but those are kind of the main four as of now that he's focusing on. Not necessarily in a huge hurry to make a decision, but Auburn felt like the visit went really, really well. And with talking with KeAndre, I think the same thing. I think that he feels like he could fit into that room really well. You brought in Robert Lewis in the first spring portal window. He's a guy that's been a good leader for that room, but a little quieter. I think KeAndre Lambert Smith would be the same way, but a little bit more vocal, a little bit more of a leader. Guy who's done it at this level, played in the Big Ten for 4 years now. So this would be pretty much exactly what you need as you shore up that wide receiver room. We've talked about it a lot on here before. You want to get one more wide receiver, but in no disrespect to these guys, you don't want a Jackson State wide receiver. You don't want a North Texas wide receiver. We saw it last year. They just couldn't adjust in time, only going through fall camp. So getting a guy who's played at Penn State for 4 years would be pretty perfect for Auburn.
Yeah, and also a guy that's played at Jordan-Hare Stadium. A couple of years ago. Yeah. I just look back. He had two catches for 16 yards in that 2022 blowout game for Penn State. So he's a guy that's played Auburn. He's seen the fan base. He understands what a game at Jordan-Hare Stadium is like. I think that's a big deal. I really do. He's seen it in action, not with his coaching staff, but he knows what Auburn's all about. And so I think that's a plus for Auburn. But I think you look in that experience again. We talk about bridging the gap. You got a talented group of young guys coming in. Question marks for the holdovers you got. KeAndre Brown had a good spring, but still had the lingering health issues. And you think about the other guys weren't out there very much. We didn't see Corey Moore very much. We didn't see Caleb Burton very much.
Jay Fair entered the portal.
Entered the portal. That's it. That's your gap. It's newcomers on one end of the spectrum and the other end of the spectrum. And so obviously would be a big addition, I believe. And this is a kind of a tweener guy, I believe. He is not the small, speedy slot receiver, but he's also not Cam Coleman either. He's not 6'4", 6'5", but he's not small. I mean, he's 6'1", 185. I mean, this guy's got some size. I think he can do a lot of different things at wide receiver. And with that experience, 120 plus career catches, this is a guy that, you're talking about the issues they had last year. I don't see those issues like that with him if he comes in. I think he's a guy that can come in and hit the ground running pretty quickly.
Yeah, so that'll wrap it up there. We're going to end this War Eagle Wake Up for your Monday morning. Hopefully you're catching this before whatever Isaiah Rakes does on Monday. Again, we're expecting that to be Auburn. So if you're catching this late Sunday night as we record it, or Monday morning, could be even more big news. Make sure you're tuned over at Auburn Undercover for that. We'll have you fully covered. We've already got you covered with the Philip Blidi news. We have a ton of other coverage, the spring portal tracker, all that stuff. So make sure you're over there at auburnundercover.com. Like I said at the beginning, subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're not already. That's totally free. That doesn't cost you anything. If you want to subscribe to Auburn Undercover and you're not subbed there already, 50% off right now as a part of the spring portal window promo that we're running. So make sure to check that out if you're not a sub. We will catch you guys again. I'm not sure if we'll catch you again this week on the YouTube, at least in terms of a podcast or whatnot. Have some different schedules. Jason has some stuff planned with the Plains Truth series, though, so hopefully get some more stuff with that, which has been fantastic. Either way, we'll catch you guys again soon. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you again.